I'd been dating Sarah for just over a year, and everything seemed pretty perfect on the surface. We'd go out to fancy dinners, take weekend trips, and she always seemed excited to see me. But something in the back of my mind kept nagging at me. Was she really with me because she cared about me, or was it because of the lifestyle I could give her? I mean, I wasn't a millionaire or anything, but I made a decent living, and she definitely liked the nice things. So, one day, after weeks of thinking it over, I decided to put her to the test. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know the truth. I would pretend to lose everything, my job, my savings, all of it, and see how she'd react. Would she stick around when things got tough, or would she walk away? It wasn't the nicest plan, but I figured it was the only way to find out for sure if she was with me, or for my wallet. So, I started plotting. I told myself that if Sarah really cared, she'd stay. And if not? Well, better to find out now than later, right? A few days later, I decided it was time to set the plan in motion. We were out for dinner, nothing too fancy but nice enough that she'd notice if something was off. I waited until we had ordered and were sitting with our drinks before I made my move. I took a deep breath and said, "Sarah, I've got some bad news. I lost my job today. The company's going through cutbacks, and I was one of the first to go." She blinked, looking a little shocked. "Wait, what? You're serious?" I nodded, putting on my best, defeated guy, face. "Yeah, it's been tough. I've been trying to keep it together, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do now. I've only got a little savings, and I don't know how long it'll last." There was a long pause. She seemed sympathetic at first, placing her hand on mine. "Oh my God, that's awful. I'm so sorry, babe," she said, but I could tell there was something else in her expression, like she was trying to process what this would mean for her. I reassured her that I'd be okay for a while but mentioned that things were going to be tight financially. That was when I saw the first real flicker of concern in her eyes, not for me, but for what this meant for our lifestyle. "Well, we'll figure it out," she said, though the enthusiasm in her voice had definitely dimmed a bit. Over the next few days, I kept up the act. I mentioned how stressful it was not knowing when I'd find another job, and I started making small adjustments to our routine. Normally, I'd take Sarah out for dinner or pick up the tab for something fun. But now, I was scaling back. I'd suggest staying in and cooking at home or doing something cheap like a movie night. At first, Sarah seemed understanding, but there was a noticeable shift in her attitude. She didn't seem as excited to hang out when the fancy dinners and weekend getaways weren't part of the picture anymore. She'd suggest going out like we used to, and I'd casually remind her that I needed to save money until I got back on my feet. It didn't take long before she started making excuses not to see me as often. "I'm really busy with work this week," or "I promised my friends I'd go out with them tonight." It was like she was slowly pulling away, and I couldn't help but feel like my worst suspicions were coming true. Then came the first real test. I told her that my savings were running out faster than I thought, and I wasn't sure how I was going to cover rent next month. Her reaction was instant. She got really quiet, looking down at her phone like she was avoiding eye contact. "That sucks," she muttered, "but I'm sure you'll figure something out." The tone in her voice made it clear, she didn't plan on helping. That was the moment I knew the test was working, and things were about to get even more interesting. After that conversation, things between Sarah and me started to change even more. She stopped coming over as much, and when she did, it was clear she wasn't happy about the situation. She'd make comments like, "It's tough for both of us," but I could tell she was really just thinking about herself. The spontaneous fun we used to have, gone. She wasn't down for staying in or doing low-cost stuff. Then, something happened that really solidified what was going on. I asked her if she wanted to help split the bill for groceries one week since we were eating in more. I said it casually, not making a big deal out of it, but her reaction was almost immediate. "Split groceries?" she repeated, looking genuinely offended. I thought you were just in a rough patch. Are you serious right now? I shrugged. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a job right now, and we're eating together, so I thought maybe we could share the cost until I'm back on my feet. That's when she let out a sigh and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. This isn't what I signed up for, she said, like she had just revealed what had been bothering her all along. It hit me like a ton of bricks. She didn't care about what I was going through. She was upset that the perks of being with me had dried up. No more fancy dinners, no more spontaneous trips, no more high-end lifestyle. And now she didn't even want to chip in for groceries. I could see the cracks in her facade getting wider by the day. After the grocery conversation, Sarah's behavior started unraveling fast. It became painfully clear that she was only sticking around because she thought I'd bounce back quickly, and we'd go back to the way things were. But as the days passed, and I kept up the act of being broke, her patience thinned out more and more. She stopped coming over altogether, except when I asked her to. And when she did show up, she was distant. Always on her phone, barely engaging in conversation, and looking bored out of her mind when we weren't doing something expensive or exciting. It was almost like she was just waiting for me to pull out a surprise trip or something, and when that didn't happen, her interest plummeted. One night, I decided to push things further. We were watching TV, and I casually mentioned that I might need to borrow some money to cover a few bills if I didn't land a new job soon. I didn't even get the full sentence out before her reaction told me everything I needed to know. "Wait, borrow money from me?" she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. I nodded, keeping it casual. "Yeah, just a small loan to get by. I'll pay you back once I get hired again." She looked like I had just insulted her. I don't think I'm in a position to lend you money right now," she stammered, avoiding eye contact. "I've got my own expenses to worry about." And there it was. She was willing to enjoy the perks when I had money, but the moment things got tough, she was backing out. No support, no loyalty, just a slow retreat from what she thought was a sinking ship. This was exactly what I'd feared from the beginning. After her reaction to the money request, I realized it was time to stop dragging this out. I needed to confront her and see where her head was really at. I invited her over, but this time, I wasn't going to play along with her games. I needed to know if she was in this for me, or just for what I could give her. We sat down, and I didn't waste any time. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, cutting through the small talk. "I feel like things have been different between us ever since I told you I lost my job. I've noticed you've been distant, and honestly, it feels like you're pulling away. Am I wrong?" She shifted uncomfortably on the couch, avoiding my eyes. "No, it's not that. I'm just stressed with work and, you know, it's been a lot lately," she said, but her voice was unconvincing. "I get that," I replied. "But I can't help but feel like the moment things got tough for me, you stopped being as supportive. When we were going out, doing fun things, everything was great. Now that I'm struggling, you don't seem to want to be around anymore." She finally looked up, her face a mix of frustration and guilt. "I didn't sign up for this, you know. I thought we'd be doing fun things together, not sitting at home, stressing about money." There it was. She admitted it. She was with me for the lifestyle, not for me. I sat back, letting her words sink in. I wasn't even angry at this point, just disappointed. The person I thought cared about me was only sticking around for the perks. "So, what now?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Are you going to stick with me through this, or is this where we part ways?" Her silence spoke volumes. I could see it on her face, she wasn't going to stick around. Sarah's silence was all the answer I needed. She wasn't willing to support me through this rough patch, even though she had no idea it was all an act. I decided to end it right there. There was no point in dragging this out any longer, especially now that her true intentions were clear. "I think it's best if we go our separate ways," I said, breaking the silence. Her eyes widened, but she didn't argue. In fact, she looked almost relieved. "I guess, if that's what you want," she mumbled, barely meeting my gaze. It was like she'd been waiting for me to end things, too. It stung, but at the same time, it felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to pretend anymore. She gathered her things and left my place without much of a goodbye. No tears, no emotional breakdown, just a quick exit. That was it. After months of being together, this was how it ended, quiet, cold, and transactional. In that moment, I realized just how little I really meant to her. After she left, I sat there in silence, processing everything. The girl I thought I could build a future with turned out to be someone who only cared about the lifestyle I provided. It was tough to swallow, but at least now I knew the truth. A part of me wanted to confront her about how I'd been faking the whole situation, but honestly, it didn't matter anymore. I was done with her, and she'd shown her true colors. The test had worked, and even though it hurt, I felt like I dodged a bullet. Now, it was time to move on and focus on finding someone who would stick by my side, no matter what. After Sarah left, I took some time to reflect. It wasn't easy ending a relationship, even one that clearly wasn't working anymore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was for the best. I deserved someone who would be there for me in both the good and bad times, not just when things were easy. The first few days after the breakup were weird. I didn't feel as sad as I expected. Instead, I felt free. No more pretending to be broke, no more wondering if she was really with me for the right reasons. I could finally stop living in that fake scenario and get back to being myself. It felt like a fresh start. I started focusing on the things that made me happy, hanging out with friends, working out, and putting time into hobbies I hadn't touched in months. I even started thinking about what I wanted in my next relationship. It was clear to me now that I needed someone who would support me regardless of my financial status. One of my friends, Mike, had been keeping up with everything and offered some advice over drinks one night. "Bro, you're better off without her," he said. "You were carrying that relationship on your back, and she was just there for the ride." He was right. Sarah had only been interested when I was showering her with gifts, fancy dinners, and trips. The moment I wasn't useful to her, she bailed. That wasn't the kind of person I needed in my life. It didn't take long for word to spread about the breakup, and soon, I was hearing from mutual friends that Sarah had already moved on, dating some guy who could provide for her. I wasn't surprised, but I was glad I didn't waste any more time on someone who didn't value me for who I really was. Now, it was all about focusing on the future and leaving the past behind. A few weeks after the breakup, things started to settle down, then one night, I got a text from Sarah. It was unexpected, and honestly, I wasn't sure what to think of it. She hadn't reached out since the breakup, so why now? The message was short and to the point. "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't know if I should even reply. After everything that happened, I wasn't sure what her intentions were. Was she feeling guilty? Did she want to come back? Or was she just reaching out for some closure? I thought about it for a while before deciding to respond. "Sure, what's up?" She replied almost immediately, "I've been thinking about everything, and I realized I made a huge mistake. I want to explain myself, if you're willing to listen." I agreed to meet her, but I was careful not to set any expectations. I wasn't about to fall for any more empty promises. We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop, and when I saw her walk in, my stomach sank. She looked different. Not in a good way. Her confidence from before was gone, replaced by a kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen from her in months. She sat down, and we just stared at each other for a second. Then, she spoke up. "I messed up. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted until now. I was only focused on myself and the life I thought I wanted, but I realize now that I was selfish. It was the first time I'd heard her admit anything like this, but part of me wasn't sure I could buy AITA. As Sarah sat across from me, her words hung in the air. It almost seemed like she was trying to convince herself more than me. She was talking a lot about herself, and I couldn't help but notice she wasn't really apologizing, just explaining her actions as if it would make everything okay. I've been so focused on my own stuff that I didn't see what I had in front of me, she said, looking genuinely remorseful. I want to make things right. I sat there quietly for a moment, processing everything. Part of me felt like I should forgive her. After all, she was owning up to what she had done. But another part of me felt like this was just another attempt to get back to the lifestyle she'd been so used to. I finally spoke up. Sarah, I appreciate you saying all this, but honestly, I don't know if I believe you. You didn't stick around when things got tough. You bailed the second things weren't easy. That's not someone I want to build a future with. She looked down, clearly hurt by my response. I know. I messed up. But I'm trying to be better, and I want to show you that I can be different. I took a deep breath. The truth was, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to give her a second chance. She'd shown me exactly who she was, and it wasn't someone I could rely on. I wasn't just looking for someone who could apologize and promise to change, I needed someone who would be there, no matter what. I'm sorry, but I can't just forget everything that happened. You've shown me who you really are, and I can't go back to that, I said, feeling a weight lift off my chest. Her face fell, but I knew I was making the right decision. I didn't need someone who would only show up when things were easy. I needed someone who would stand by me through thick and thin, and Sarah, unfortunately, wasn't that person. She left quietly, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had finally closed that chapter, and now, it was time to move forward without any more baggage. A few weeks went by, and I kept myself busy. Work, friends, focusing on self-improvement, it felt good to get back to things that truly mattered. Then one night, while I was out with a couple of buddies, I got a message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Sarah. I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to let you know I'm sorry for everything. I've been thinking about what you said, and I've been working on myself. I hope one day you can forgive me. I didn't respond. And I didn't feel guilty about it. This was the final step in moving forward, leaving the past where it belonged, behind me. As we were talking, a girl named Megan caught my eye. We started chatting about everything and nothing. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in a while, I realized I wasn't comparing her to Sarah. I wasn't worrying about what she could offer me or if she was interested for the wrong reasons. It was refreshing. A few weeks later, Megan and I went on a date. Nothing too fancy, just coffee and a walk in the park, but it was real. I didn't feel like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I didn't feel like she was either. We just enjoyed each other's company. I couldn't help but think how different this all felt compared to when I was with Sarah. There was no drama, no games, just two people getting to know each other. It was simple, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right track. A few months into seeing Megan, things were going smoothly. We had a rhythm to our relationship. No drama, no mind games, just mutual respect and understanding. I found myself thinking how different it was compared to my past with Sarah. With Megan, I could be myself, and she didn't expect anything else. It was refreshing. I didn't feel pressured to act a certain way or constantly prove myself. But then, one night, Megan dropped a bombshell. We were out for dinner when she suddenly asked, "Can I ask you something personal?" I could tell by the way she said it that she was serious, and honestly, it made me a bit nervous. We'd been getting along so well, so what could it be? "Sure, what's up?" I asked, trying to stay calm. She hesitated, then looked me in the eyes. "I know we've only been dating for a few months, but I need to know, are you over your ex?" The question caught me off guard. I knew she wasn't trying to make me feel guilty or push me into anything, but I could see the concern on her face. It was a valid question. Our pasts are part of who we are, and she didn't want to invest more time in something if I wasn't ready for it. I paused for a moment, thinking about how to answer. To be honest, there were times I still thought about Sarah. It wasn't that I wanted to go back to her, but there were moments I felt like I had unfinished business. But I'd worked hard to let go of that chapter. I didn't want to carry that baggage into something new with Megan. Yeah, I'm over it, I said, looking her in the eyes. I've put that part of my life behind me. What happened with Sarah was a learning experience, but I'm not carrying that baggage around anymore. Megan looked relieved, but then she added, good. Because I don't want to be compared to her or feel like I'm just a rebound. I really like you, and I need to know you're ready for this. Her words hit me hard. I could tell she was being open and honest, and that meant a lot to me. It also made me realize that this relationship with Megan wasn't just another quick fling. This was real, and it had the potential to be something more. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, life threw me a curveball I never saw coming. After getting comfortable with Megan and feeling like I was finally moving on from my past with Sarah, something happened that shook everything up. It started with a message. I was at work one afternoon when my phone buzzed with a text. I didn't recognize the number, but the message immediately caught my attention. Hey, it's Sarah. We need to talk. My heart skipped a beat. Why was she reaching out now? I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and honestly, I thought that chapter was closed. Megan and I had been building something solid, and I wasn't about to let Sarah ruin it. But the message didn't stop there. It went on, I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I've made some big changes. There's something I need to tell you, it's important. The curiosity got the best of me. I couldn't ignore it. I replied, what's going on, Sarah? Why are you texting me? The response came quickly, I've changed, and I'm not the person I was before. But that's not why I'm texting you. It's about something you need to know, something that could change everything. Please just hear me out. I was caught between a rock and a hard place. Megan was in my life now, and I was moving forward. But Sarah was still lingering, pulling at strings I thought I had already cut. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. What could she possibly want to say that could affect my current situation? I thought about ignoring it. But there was this nagging feeling, like something bigger was at play. I decided to call her, hoping to get some clarity. Sarah, what is this about? What do you want? I asked as soon as she picked up. There was a long pause before she spoke. I'm pregnant, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know how to process them. I wasn't ready for this. I barely had a grip on my own life after everything that had happened, and now Sarah was telling me this. I felt my stomach drop. Pregnant? I repeated, almost in disbelief. Are you sure? Yeah, she replied. I found out a few days ago. And I've been thinking about everything. I think we need to talk about the future. Our future. I was stunned. My mind was racing. How was I supposed to handle this? I hadn't even processed my breakup with Sarah, and now she was telling me she was pregnant. I sat there, stunned, staring at my phone. Sarah's words replayed in my mind over and over, I'm pregnant. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How had I gone from thinking my life was finally on track to being faced with this bombshell? I wasn't even sure how to feel. I immediately thought about Megan. She had been amazing, supportive, understanding, and patient with me. We were building something real, something solid. But now I had this mess with Sarah. She was pregnant with my child, and there was no denying it that I called Megan. I couldn't hide this from her. It was the right thing to do, even if it would hurt her. She picked up quickly, her voice warm and welcoming as usual. Hey, babe. How's your day going? Not great, I said, my voice shaky. We need to talk. Megan must have sensed the change in my tone because her voice immediately shifted. What's going on? I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation was going to be one of the hardest of my life. It's about Sarah. She's pregnant, and it's mine. There was a long pause. I could hear Megan trying to process the words, and I knew she was struggling. I didn't blame her. I was too. After what felt like forever, Megan finally spoke. Are you sure? Yeah, I said quietly. She just told me. Wow, Megan replied. This is a lot. I could feel her trying to hold it together, and I appreciated that she wasn't freaking out right away. But I knew this was huge, and it was going to change everything. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I'm not going back to Sarah. I don't want to be with her. But I can't just walk away from my responsibility either. This isn't about me and her anymore. It's about a child. Megan sighed, and I could hear the sadness in her voice. I don't know what to say. I get it, you have a responsibility. But I can't pretend like this doesn't affect me, too. You're telling me this now, and I have no idea how to process it. I'm not asking you to have all the answers, I said quickly. I just needed you to know. I'm going to figure this out, but I don't want to hurt you. There was another long pause. Finally, Megan spoke again, and her voice was softer, but more resolute. I appreciate you telling me. But we need to figure out where we go from here. I don't know what that means for us, but we need to talk. A lot. This is a big thing for both of us. Yeah, I agreed, I know. I'm sorry. We ended the conversation there, but I knew nothing was going to be the same. Megan was right, this was big. It had been a few days since I spoke with Megan, and honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I had spent my nights staring at the ceiling, trying to weigh my options, but the answer had always been right in front of me. Megan was the one who had stood by me, who had been there when things got tough. I couldn't throw all of that away because of a mess I created with Sarah. I had been so caught up in trying to do the right thing by Sarah and the baby, but the truth was, I didn't owe her anything. She had betrayed me and lied to me about her intentions from the beginning. It wasn't just the pregnancy, it was how she had manipulated me, how she had used my kindness for her own benefit. And I couldn't ignore the fact that she had never been the person I thought she was. I realized I was wasting my time trying to make something work with someone who clearly didn't respect me. Sarah had played her cards, and I saw right through it now. There was no future with her. But with Megan? That was different. Megan was the one who cared about me, who had been honest with me, even when it hurt. And I wasn't going to throw that away. That night, I called Sarah. I had been putting this off for too long, but it was time to end it once and for all. She answered after the second ring, her voice too casual, almost like nothing had happened. Hey, what's up? She asked. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What about? She replied, as if she didn't already know. It's over. I'm not going to be part of this anymore, I said, my words coming out more forcefully than I expected. I'm not going to play the game you've been playing with me. I'm done with all the lies, the manipulation, and the drama. There was a brief pause on the other end. I could almost hear the surprise in her silence. You're serious? She asked, almost as if she didn't believe me. I'm serious. I'm choosing Megan. I'm done trying to fix things with you. I didn't wait for her response. I hung up the phone, not wanting to hear her try to talk me out of it. I knew she would. She had always been good at that, at making me doubt myself. But I wasn't going to let her anymore. This was my decision, and I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I drove straight to Megan's place. I had been thinking about it all night, and I knew I had to make things right with her. I didn't want to waste any more time pretending like Sarah had any hold on me. Megan was the one who deserved my full attention, my commitment, my love. When she opened the door, I saw that she had been crying. My heart dropped at the sight, but I knew this had to be said. "Megan, I'm so sorry for everything. For not being clear with you sooner," I said, my voice filled with regret. "I've made my decision. I'm choosing you. I'm done with Sarah, and I want to be with you. I should have never let it get this far." Megan looked at me for a moment, her expression unreadable. I waited, not knowing what she would say. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I held her tight, not wanting to let go. "I've been so scared, you know," she whispered. "Scared you'd choose her, that I wasn't enough. But if you really want to be with me, then I'll be here." "I do," I said, my voice steady. "I want to be with you. You're the one I'm choosing. Sarah's not the one for me. You are." Megan pulled back slightly, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm glad you made that choice," she said softly. And with that, I knew I had made the right decision. Choosing Megan was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the best. I had learned the hard way that sometimes, it's not about doing what seems right in the moment, it's about who you're willing to fight for, who you're willing to commit to, and who you know in your heart is the person you're meant to be with. For me, that person was Megan. And I wasn't going to lose her again. The next chapter of my life was with Megan, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held. No more lies, no more games. Just us, moving forward together.